Good evening, Panthers. It is your principal, Mrs. McDonald, for my very first Panthers and Pajamas. Every evening, I will read a story of my choosing to you guys as you get ready for bed. I miss you so much, and I'm thinking of you and wanted to connect with you in a way that I've always enjoyed as a teacher, and that's reading stories. So, tonight, we're going to focus on the global competency of respect for difference with one of my favorite books of all time, A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. I hope you enjoy. Camila Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans and she wanted to fit in. Camila was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today, she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people there to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror, and then she screamed. She's real cute. Her mother ran into the room and she screamed too. Oh my heavens! She cried. You are completely covered in stripes. This was certainly true. Camila was striped from head to toe. She looked like a rainbow. Mrs. Cream felt Camila's forehead. Do you feel all right? She asked. I feel fine, Camila answered. But just look at me. You get back into bed this instant, her mother ordered. You're not going to school today. Camila was relieved. She didn't want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other kids would say. And she had no idea what to wear with those crazy old stripes. I love the illustrations in this book. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camila. Most extraordinary, he exclaimed. I've never seen anything like it. Are you having any coughs? Sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncontrollable twitching? No, Camila told him. I feel fine. Well then, Dr. Bumble said, turning to Mrs. Cream, I don't see any reason why she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help her clear up those stripes in a few days. If it doesn't, you know where to reach me. And off he went. It's all in her face. The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camila. They called her Camila Crayon and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned red, white, and blue, and she broke out into stars. Oh my. So this name calling, were they being global students? The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, let's see some purple polka dots. And sure enough, Camila turned all purple polka dotty. Someone else shouted, checkerboard, checkerboard. And a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors. And poor Camila was changing faster than you change the channels on a TV. Definitely not quality behavior. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. I'm sorry, Mrs. Cream, he said. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camila home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from the other parents. They're afraid that her stripes might be contagious. Camila was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago, everyone liked her. Now, no one wanted to be in the same room as her. Her father tried to make her feel better. Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart? He asked. No, thank you, sighed Camila. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at enough for one day. Her parents looked so worried. Well, I see, Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. I better bring the specialist. We'll be right over. About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. This is Dr. Group, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. Then the specialist went to work with Camila. They squeezed and they jabbed, they tapped and they tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not the mumps, concluded Dr. Group. Or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. Definitely not the chicken pox, put in Dr. Cricket. Sunburn, said Dr. Young. Try these, said the specialist. They each handed her a different colored bottle with different colored pills. Take one of each before bed, said Dr. Group. Then they filed out of the front door, followed by Dr. Bumble. If you guys ever been to the doctors, you know that sometimes those visits are not fun. So imagine 4 doctors at once. That night, Camila took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with her face on it. What? Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called, but this time instead of the specialist, he brought experts. Dr. Gourd and Mr. Mellon were the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camila was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and they whispered. Dr. Gourd finally spoke. It might be a virus, he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camila. Possibly some sort of bacteria, said Mr. Mellon, and out popped squiggly little bacteria tails. Well, it could be a fungus, said Dr. Gourd. Instantly, Camila was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camila, then at each other. Well, we need to go over some of these numbers again back at the lab, Dr. Gourd explained. We'll call you if we need something. But the experts didn't even have a clue, much less a cure. They're just supposed to be the smart ones. By now, the TV news had found out about Camila. Reporters from every channel were outside her house, telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped out on the front lawn. All these people. Do you guys remember what caused this? The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, an old medicine man, a guru, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camila's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. Oh, Camila. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camila. Close your eyes, she said. Breathe deeply and become one with your room. Oh, goodness. I wish you hadn't said that, Camila groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, and her nose became her dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. What are we going to do? Cried Mrs. Cream. It just keeps getting worse and worse. She began to sob. Look at that. Look at her bow. So there's her mouth, which became the bed. Her nose became the dresser, and the paintings became her eyes. As a mom, I don't know what I would do either. I would probably sob as well. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. Excuse me, she said brightly, but I think I can help. Isn't she cute? She's so cute. She went into Camila's room and looked around. My goodness, she said with a shake of her head. What we have here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've ever seen. She pulled out a container of small green beans from her bag. Here, she said, these might do the trick. Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh, my, no, replied the kind old woman. There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you like some, wouldn't you? She asked Camila. Camila wanted a big, heaping plate full of lima beans more than just about anything, but she was afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh dear, the old woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back into her bag and started toward the door. Camila watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste good, and being laughed at for eating them was nothing compared to what she's been going through. She finally couldn't wait. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camila's mouth, or her bed. Said Camila. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camila, and everything was back to normal. I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew the real you was in there somewhere. She patted Camila on the head. Then she went outside and vanished in the crowd. There she is, cute little Camila. Afterwards, Camila wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never had even a touch of the stripes again. Well, she has it in her bow. So this evening, I want you guys to think about some of the things that you really enjoy, that you're concerned about whether or not somebody will like you if they found out about it. You stay true to yourself. We as adults even go through that as well. But this book right here has helped me to embrace all the different things about myself that I have grown to love and appreciate. If they love you, they'll accept you just the same. You guys have a wonderful evening, and I will see you back here tomorrow at 8 o'clock. Good night.